special city council meeting for Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021 to order. Welcome everybody. And as we have been doing for quite some time, this meeting is being held electronically as allowed by the Code of Iowa due to the continuing COVID pandemic. And we're going to have our second of 3 evenings of budget presentations. So tonight we're going to start with Community Enrichment and Keith Abraham. Keith, go ahead, take it over.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And just sharing the screen. You guys see it? Yep, everybody's good? All right. Well, first off, I just want to thank the City Council for all the support that you give us year in and year out with the funding to be able to do what our residents want and provide the services that that they are looking for. So I'm going to go through with things. So first off, Parks and Recreation starts on page 146, and really just gonna kind of go through a few things just in regards to what the pandemic has done for us. In Steve's letter regarding the budget, he shared information with you. So I'm not going to go through the numbers or rehash some of that information. But what I do want to tell you is one thing that we have done to get a pulse of the community is we have done 2 surveys. We did one in May of last year and also one in November. And what we did that for is really to try to get a feel for what people were comfortable with. What could we do differently in regards to providing services? So they've really got some good information from our users in regards to precautions we could take, safety measures we could take, what people were willing to do and not do. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the things that we have done in response to those surveys. Also, we did have a big impact on our participation. We have some programs where we might be 50 to 70%. We have other programs, 25%. Of participation, what we've had in prior years. And then also we have had to cancel programs just because people weren't ready to do that. Obviously a big impact on revenue, and Steve had shared some of that information. One thing that just is on the slide right now is the impact on our part-time staff. So in 2019, and this is pretty typical, we hire about 450, 470 part-time temporary seasonal staff members. Due to COVID in 2020, we actually only hired 272. So it's a pretty big drop in number of people that we're hiring for our programs. One of the other things that we did is because we didn't hire some staff, we also, some of our full-time staff, recreation managers, did do things in maintenance. Craig Kaufman spent most of his summer mowing and doing other things out at Homewood Golf Course. So one of the things that we did do is because of COVID-19, we did partner with the library, police department, and the fire department. Kelly Omlid led this charge, but we did what we called Park Appaloozas, and we went out to different parks and did some different activities. And you can see one of the activities that we did. We had a kickball, and we did have a number of people. I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert. Rich Higgins, when he goes through his stuff, he actually has some pictures of a water activity that we did, which was very popular as well. One of the other things that we've been doing is outdoor classes, and we did virtual classes, and now we're going to do a combination of virtual and in-person classes. And some of these things, may be something that becomes a norm for us. The outdoor classes have been very popular. In fact, Nancy Shaw, who's our wellness manager, she actually did have an outdoor class even in December because there was a number of people that wanted to do that. So you can see the picture on the left was a new program that we started this year, Parkour, really trying to use your surroundings for fitness activities. And then on the picture on the right, you can see we're giving people the option. They can either come in person, which some people are comfortable, and then we also have it virtual as well. So in that particular class, a number of people were virtual. So one of the other things, we did this with Municipal Band. We did some virtual concerts last summer. And one of the things, Craig Kaufman, who's our auditorium, bandshell, and community center manager, one of the things that he did is he recently applied for a $5,000 grant and received the $5,000. And we used that to recoup some of the costs that we had with streaming the Municipal Band concerts. He also was able to purchase some equipment that enables us to better live stream events. So what you see on the screen right now is Virtually Anywhere program that he has started with local artists. We're streaming those on Thursday nights from the auditorium, and that is going really well. That started January 14th and will go through the end of March and maybe even some in April. So one of the other things that we've had a challenge with, Ruth Lee, who you can see a picture on the left there. With it, it's actually dummies that we can use for practice for life saving. So our lifeguards, one of the things that we had when we were trying to train lifeguards last spring, was very difficult to do the in-person life-saving techniques. So Jill Bird, who's our aquatics manager, found these dummies, and you can see from the pictures, you throw them in the water, they kind of mimic the weight of an adult or a child, and now it's a way to still have lifeguards training on the rescue techniques without having to come in contact with other individuals. So this is something that we're doing as well. So going into summer programming, we were going to try to start a Miracle League last fall. Some delays in the construction, but this is something that we are going to be doing this spring. We had some conversation with some of the who we feel will be the users, Child Serve, Mainstream Living, ARC of Story County, and Friendship Arc Homes. We'll be meeting with them in the near future and getting leagues set up, and they will help us get the word out, and we'll start forming teams and kick off a league hopefully this summer. So one of the other things I mentioned earlier, that some of our programs we were not able to hold for a while. Dance and gymnastics we didn't, but we are requiring masks, and we do have enough people. Parents we're excited to get the kids back into the programs, and again with social distancing and things. And it's just a couple of pictures of things that we are doing, and those are programs that Ben Flaherty oversees. So aquatics, I mentioned Gilbert. One of the things that we did when we started opened up municipal pool was lap swimming. That has gone really well. We added a number of different lap swimming times, and when the high school was all virtual, we had a number of classes or times throughout the day and into the evening and on the weekends, and that is still continuing. We did start offering water walking, and that's going a little bit slow, but it's something that we're doing as well. And one thing that has really kind of taken off with aquatics is rentals, private rentals up at municipal pool. We are finding that families or a family with another family who's in their COVID bubble are renting the facility, and that's going really well. And we've already far surpassed the number of rentals that we've had in previous years just by doing that and putting that out there as an option. The other thing, picture of Furman on the right. We're making plans. We are hoping that we can open Furman to some degree this summer, and that's what we're are working on. And we have a number of different options depending on what proclamations the governor has or what other things are in place that we need to follow. But our hope is that we will be able to open Furman to some degree this summer. As far as fees and charges with all of our programs, you can see for this year, And right now, fees and charges at its January meeting, Parks and Recreation Commission did approve the fees and charges. So you can see 31% of the programs are experiencing increases. Ice rental rates, just picked out a few of these, 5% increase. Homewood with our greens fees, we're going up $1. And Nate Peets, who is a recreation manager, he did some research regarding other courses in the area, and we felt that was a good increase to do. Furman Aquatic Center right now, we did not propose any changes. Obviously, we weren't open last year. It is something that we're still not sure if we'll be offering green or season passes or not, but that may be something that we come back with some other options for the commission to look at in the future. And then auditorium rental rates are going up 3% as well. So a few pluses. You've seen Ames Tribune, best of Story County. They do it. So we had several programs this year. So youth dance program was named a finalist in 2020. Our yoga program was named a finalist as well. And then the big thing. Homewood Golf Course was actually voted the best in Story County in 2020. And really need to give a shout out to Pat Wienia, who's our turf maintenance supervisor, does a tremendous job with the golf course. We did have a situation this year where our irrigation comes from a well, and our well pump went out. And so him and Craig, who I mentioned earlier, used water trucks to water the greens every day until we could get that pump fixed, so we wouldn't lose the greens. So you can tell by that picture, course is in great shape, and they do a wonderful job. So Ames ISU Ice Arena, with this, this is one of the facilities. Again, Homewood and the Ice Arena are both enterprise funds. And the Ice Arena has been probably affected the most. Throughout the budget sheets, you will have seen some increases in the general fund of FTEs in some of our program areas, and then some FTE reductions in the Ice Arena. We're really trying to do whatever we can to make sure that we don't take that unreserved fund balance that we have too low. So right now, at the end of 21-22, we're projecting that fund balance would be about $50,000, the unreserved portion of it. But we have had a reduction in ice rentals. ISU not offering some of their programs, and then with all of our open skate sessions, we've had to limit participation. We've been doing register ahead of time. Again, hopefully we can start getting bumping those up. But Taylor Bassett, who's our Ice Arena manager, has been doing really well with things there. But that has been affected probably the most by COVID. We've talked about this before, but I just wanted to show you some slides with some kids, some people utilizing it. This is a great amenity. We hear nothing but positive comments, and you can see by the pictures. A lot of people have been using it, when the weather has been, conducive. One thing with Bandshell, we did do the lighting upgrades. So you can see some pictures. If you have gone by the Bandshell in the evening, we do have it lit up, different colors at different times. And one of the things that we do is it is kind of like a big security light as well. But this will really help us promote different programs, really offer an additional service for anybody that is going to be using the Bandshell, especially even with municipal band as well. I just wanted to with a couple of things. This was a before and after shot of the Ines Grove restroom renovation that we did. You can see a marked difference, and we did go from men's and women's restroom to now gender neutral restrooms, and that really has been our what we've done with the latest 3 renovations, and also with Homewood Clubhouse is going to gender neutral restrooms. you've seen these pictures before with Innis Grove, the new restroom, but I do want to just mention from an operational standpoint, we did put some things into these restrooms that are really helping us from a maintenance standpoint. We do have timed door locks, on them, linear drains, which is just a drain at the back wall, goes along the whole length. So now our staff can come in instead of going in circles to try to get the water to drain to the drain in the middle of the floor. Generally, it's all at the back. And then also we have motion infrared sensors that we're using, which will help benefit police who are on patrol. If somebody is in there at night, the lights will stay on and police will know to take a look. If we move into park maintenance, and this, Joshua Thompson, and then we have Paul Tauke, who's our forester, Kyle Jacobson, who's our parks and facilities supervisor, and then also Pat Wienia, who I mentioned is our turf maintenance supervisor. They do a wonderful job with everything in the parks. So again, we just continue to do all of trail cleaning as much as possible. Here's up at Innis Grove, kind of a before and after picture of what looks like. Some things tend to get overgrown, and really what we're trying to do is get things pushed back, and then we can better maintain and keep it, like that picture on the right, in the future. One of the things we did this year, Paul Tauke and our maintenance staff, and I can go through and mention all of them, but our maintenance staff does a great job. A number of them are burn certified, but we did our first woodland burn out at Munn Woods, and there's just a couple of pictures, and that went very well. And other burns, obviously we burn up at Ada Hayden quite a bit. This is the grasses around the pond up at Moore Memorial. And again, just really helps us control some of the invasives and some of the woody vegetation that kind of starts popping up. So the other thing, invasive species management. And in some cases, up at Ada Hayden, Siberian elm is an invasive species. We have to stay on top of that. Buckthorn, honeysuckle, garlic mustard in some of our other parks, trying to do what we can. Again, this is where we work with our friends groups, if we have one in some of those locations, to help us with that as well. And then, again, we use volunteers as much as we can, ISU groups. We do have Joshua and I just met with a group, and in regards to the sororities, and they're looking for community service opportunities, 2,000 women that they have in the sorority, and looking at some different options. So we went through that, and we have a number of other volunteers, obviously, throughout the our programs and facilities. So that's a quick overview of Parks and Recreation, just some of the things that we have going on. So any questions about Parks and Recreation before maybe jump into cemetery and the right-of-way?
Any questions for Keith?
Keith, we haven't had an update on EAB for a while. Are we closing in on that program?
Yep, and actually, I have a slide when I get into the right of way. So I'll answer your question when we get to that.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, Keith, please go ahead.
Now we go to cemetery on page 178, and just a few things. The mayor and Councilmember Garten were out at the Wreaths Across America in December. It was a great event, something that they did, and you can see they laid 7 wreaths down for each branch of services. The mayor spoke at this event. Cliff Barker, who's president of the Ames Legion Riders and also a member of American Legion, put this event together. And their goal is, in starting next year, hopefully get past COVID, but what they want to do is they want to lay a wreath on every veteran's grave. Right now, that number is 1,495 veterans between the two cemeteries. And I thought this was an interesting one. The earliest veteran burial that we have is from 1861. And that's out at the Ontario Cemetery. So we'll continue to work with this group to make that happen and give them whatever support they need because we feel it's a great event. So, and that's something that's across the nation. They did these wreaths at the same time. They had a number of cemeteries all across the nation. So a couple other things. With fees for the cemetery, we do have a 7% increase. We're trying to get our fees up to what some of the other cemeteries are in the area. We did have a 7% increase last year, and we received really no comments in regards to the fee increase. In fact, some of the comments that we heard was that they really appreciate a gradual increase from year to year rather than all of a sudden have to jump them up several $100s because we haven't kept up with the time. So that's a comment that we have heard. And also we are finishing or working on the scatter garden. We should have that in place hopefully by summertime. That we will have the columbariums. We'll have another columbarium that will be going up. And we'll be moving the other one that's part of that master plan with the pavilion, and we'll be putting the pavilion up, which we talked about at the CIP. So any questions about cemetery?
Keith, the number of interments, or sorry, the number of cemetery lots sold seems to have dropped somewhat. Is that a longer trend, or are we always kind of in the 120 to 150 range?
Yeah, so our average is about 120. So anytime that we go above 120, we're doing really well. When we're a little bit low, so with some of those with the lot sales, we do have some people that we have sold some lots, but we know that people have passed away and just haven't done their burial. But right now, with some people, if they are doing cremations, they may just be waiting to purchase the lot and then do the celebration of life all at one time. So as long as we're hanging right around that 120 number, we're feeling we're doing pretty well with that. Any other questions on cemetery? If not, we'll move on to right-of-way, which is page 122. And with the right-of-way, we do a lot of pruning within the park system, within the right-of-way. One of the things in the pictures that you have there is for mature trees. So we go into different areas. We have the city broken up in I think 29 different areas, and what we're doing is doing zone pruning once every 5 years in each of those areas, and we're doing the same thing with parks. But one of the things we do is we do put out door knockers, and Paul Tauke, our city forester, and then Joe Newman, who's our principal clerk out at the cemetery and also helps with the right-of-way stuff, put together this flyer. And I'm just showing you some of the pictures. But so when we put the door knockers on, we're putting this flyer on, we're really trying to educate the community not only on what we're doing in the right-of-way in regards to tree pruning, but hopefully they will take some of this information, and if they have trees on their property and they're doing some of their own pruning, they can do some of that as well. And you can see just some of the things that we're trying to do. And again, one of the biggest things with the pruning is try to avoid issues in the future. So you can see also young trees, much smaller. You can see the difference between before and after some of the things that doing. And sometimes people will come out and say, they get frustrated. Boy, you're just chopping up my tree. You're taking down too much. And Paul does a tremendous job working with the public and explaining things and really getting them to understand what we're trying to do. I do have a couple of before and after pictures. So like the tree on the left, this should have been pruned earlier than what it was. But you can see that we did take off one of those, codominant stems. You can see the picture on the right. This tree will be a lot healthier in the future, because if we let it grow like it does, or like it was on the left, that's a prime tree for ice, heavy snow to split. And then again, when those things happen, they become a risk tree, and we don't know where that limb is going to fall, whether it's on property or on people. So that's what we're really trying to avoid. With this picture, this is the same tree from 2018 and then 2021. And sometimes, again, people say, oh, you're taking too much and so on. But what happens if you trim them at the right time, you can see it after it was just trimmed in 2018. Over time, what happens is that bark starts, covering up. It starts healing itself and becomes a much healthier tree. So that's what we're trying to show in this picture as well. From a total city perspective, with this, we have the picture on the left. That's a bucket truck that we have. What we did is Paul, had conversations with Brad Becker from traffic, and what he has done is he is letting us use their bucket truck unless they may need it for a day or two. But what it does is now it gets us, we're able to get 2 crews out trimming, and we can get a lot of these trees trimmed a lot quicker. And this is just one example. There's a lot of total city perspective that happens between us and Public Works or electric, and so on. So risk trees, that's a big one. If you remember several years ago, we asked for additional money because we had 75 to 100 hazardous trees or risk trees. But this is things, we go out and we do the trimming, but occasionally we wind up, something happens, and then we see a tree like this. This was one that we had to take down at Fairway. Paul had seen it, I believe, if I remember right, it was on a Friday night, about 4 o'clock. And it was one of those things where we called their contractor, and they went in and took it down right away because we didn't want something to happen. But these are things, even though right now our risk tree list is 0, we still do find trees like this every so often. And then to your question, Tim, here's an update, and we broke it down between parks, cemeteries, and right of ways. You can see that in the parks we have 1 tree, 1 emerald or ash tree left, and that's out at Hira Lob and Tahira and Lob Hira Park. So we have 1 tree out there that we need to take down. You can see what we've done in the cemeteries and what we've done in the right of way. So we're in year 8 right now. If the plan that we had right now, if we would have followed the plan to a T, we would have had taken out about 56% of the ash trees at this point in time. Right now, we're at 79%. So we've been able to accelerate what we've done, and that's to Kyle and Paul's and all of our staff, and Public Works helped for a number of years at the beginning. But that's why we've been able to take so many park trees down. The 500 that are left are starting to get to be those larger trees, and those are going to be a lot of contracted trees that we'll need to take out. So that kind of gives you an overview of the right of way. So any questions about the right of way or anything else? Did that answer your question, Tim?
It sure did. But the other side of it is, do you have off the top of your head, have a sense of the trees we planted? Because the EAB was both to remove and also to plant a more diverse tree species. You know where we are there?
Yeah, and maybe if Josh was listening, he can come over to my office and give me that number real quick. I know just since July 1st, we've planted 30 trees in the park system, and we've planted 95 trees in the right of way. But over the last, and since 14, So since 2014, we have planted over 1,000 trees. So it's not maybe quite there yet with the one for one. But one of the things that we also talk about is that in the park system, we necessarily aren't always going for a one for one, because some of the parks that we have, we actually have too many trees and trying to thin some of them out. But yeah, we are still planting. So that's where we're at since 2014.
And I realized that derecho made a huge impact as well on our park. So it's amazing that you planted 1,000 trees. Well done. So very exciting. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Keith, do we have a number of trees that we lost in the derecho?
We lost about 100, and that's just I believe full trees that we had to take down. Now we may, and we're still finding things, Gloria, with some trees may have took on some damage, but with snow and ice, there are additional trees that we still see that that one's got to come down, or that one needs to be trimmed. But I know just even at Homewood, we had 100 trees affected, either lost branches or we had to take down.
Well, compared to what happened over in Cedar Rapids, I guess we're getting off light.
So let me clarify. Joshua just gave me to clarify. The 100 trees is just in the park system. He doesn't have the number off the top of his head with the right of way, but we know there were quite a few that we lost in the right of way as well.
Other questions for Keith? Keith, could you just give us just a quick update, or Joshua could, on the, you guys purchased a pretty heavy duty bush hog type to improve the visibility along multimodal trails as well as in the park area. Have we gotten that to the point where everyone's comfortable that we've got a much better line of sight in all those park trail areas and park system?
I can't say that we have them all done, but we have been using that brush mower an awful lot, and our staff loves it. So we have been able to Ada Hayden. We've done some things, I believe, in Brookside, River Valley, so a number of different places, and some of it works really well. Sometimes we have to go in there with other equipment, like along the Vet Med Trail. We've had to clean some of that, but we continue to do it. And one of the things that we've been able to do also, Mayor, is we have hit some areas now multiple times. Some of those areas that we feel are more critical, we have been able to hit those multiple times, and that is helping, because now instead of going in and having to spend potentially weeks, to really clean out some of those areas, we can go in there in a day or two and take things back down, so to keep those lines of sight open. So
if park staff been going out and just we talked about it after the tragic killing of Celia, just park and potentially even law enforcement going out and doing periodic spot checks, make sure there's not issues, people congregating. How has that been going?
We've been doing that as well. We have staff in the park system an awful lot, and we have a good number of residents that when they're out, say they walk North River Valley or East River Valley, those trails back there, if they see something, they're calling us right away. If they see something in one of the parks, they call us right away. But anytime that we do see something, we do go out with a police officer and our staff. We try to find who's there, try to get them hooked up with services as best we can. So that is continuing as well.
Any questions for Keith? Thank you, Keith. Appreciate your report.
All right. And again, thanks for everything that you do for us and the support that you give us. And on behalf of the residents, you know, they love that support that you give us so we can provide the services that they're looking for. So thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Com.
Good evening, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Donald Com, Director of Electric Services. I'll share my screen here. All right. Good evening. I'm with Electric Services, obviously, Electric Services Director. One of the things I'd like to mention, which isn't widely known, but in 2021, the Electric Services Department will be celebrating its 125th anniversary. We've been in existence a long time. Tonight, I'm going to walk through the electric department budget, and I've got it broken down basically into the various departments or divisions that are located within department. Our section begins on page 62, but before I cover electric specifically, I believe on the agenda, it also asks that I talk a little bit about our other community protections, and that can be found on 56. This is one area where we work very closely with other departments within the city. We cover basically streetlights with Public Works, and we cover the storm warning siren system with police. I do not have a sheet on that. The good news is there's actually a very slight cost decrease in this particular program, or both programs, in 21-22. So I did not create a slide for that. So I'm going to begin on page 62, which is the electric department budget. And I'll start off and talk a little bit about each of the divisions. So within the electric administration division, located just at the base of the power plant, for fiscal year 21-22, we're going to be asking to spend about a little over $1.2 million. That's a very slight increase. What's driving a lot of those costs are we've got some building maintenance to do within our administration building. Covered within electric admin, and I'll touch on it a little bit more on the following slide, we also manage the demand side management program. That's a program or a series of programs that we use to keep our energy consumption low so that we don't have to build future power plants. And by doing that, it allows us to keep our rates low. Council first authorized us to have demand side management programs in 2007. And since then, and this is a little bit of a calculation, we have been able to keep our peak down to below 130.7 megawatts. And again, this is more of a hand calculation. Had we not had demand side management programs, our estimates are that we would have had 25 megawatts more and would be looking at building another generator at this time. So demand side management programs have been very effective, not only for the utility, but it's also helped our customers out. Also within electric administration as a whole is our SunSmart solar program that went operational the day before Christmas. And we've actually moved that program from electric admin, and it's in our fuel and purchase power, but I'll be talking about it a little bit more here in a couple minutes. Have some nice things to share about that. This last year, and probably this year, we had our first virtual eco fair. Normally we love to get together with our customers, and it's not just electric, but it's water and Public Works. Fire usually shows up in library. At City Hall, we were not able to hold it in person last year, but through some very talented ideas within the city, we were able to hold it virtually, and KHOI allowed us to have guest speakers throughout a day on a Saturday and share information with our customers and residents of Ames on various aspects of looking at the environment. In looking at the satisfaction survey that comes out of Susan Guiazza's office, again, Ames Electric has a satisfaction score of pretty high. I want to preface that these the survey went out before the derecho, so we are anticipating next year that when we do survey our customers, we're going to see more issues and concerns about the outage that lasted on August 10th due to the high winds. And that's my last bullet there. And I believe council has been presented with a study report that was put together by city staff. Brian Phillips championed that project, kind of explaining all that happened. And electric, together with other departments, are looking at ways of making our system more resilient so that in the future, if things like this happen again, we're much more able to take care of our customers, the citizens, and reduce outages to the best of our ability. One of the other things that's nice to mention a little bit about electric services, that overall our rates with our neighbors, that includes, there are actually 4 utilities that serve electricity to residents of Ames. And we compared to the other 3, our residential rates are about 25% lower. Our commercial rates are about 8% lower. And from an industrial standpoint, we're on par with the average of our other 3 energy providers here within the city of Ames. Mentioned peak before, and we watch our peak demand very carefully. We did hit a peak for the year back in August 27th. We hit 126.3. Our all-time peak, which I mentioned, which occurred in 2012, July of 2012, was 130.7. So our demand side management programs continue to work and allow us to not force us into new generation. I mentioned the kind of the demand side energy portion of it, demand side management. This is on page 66. I want to talk a little bit about SunSmart, but again, I want to preface that and say going forward, that will actually be found in our fuel and purchase power area, but I want to cover it here right now. It did go operational just before Christmas. We are doing some rather unique things, which I'm really excited about. So normally when you build a solar farm, a solar garden, you have to keep the weeds and things down from underneath the solar panels. You don't want it to grow in and block it. We're working with the state to actually put in vegetation that will be pollinators. This will help butterfly and bee habitat in the local area, and it'll take a couple of years to establish. So rather than putting rock or doing heavy mowing, we'll have pollinators out there. Then going forward, after those things get established, again, rather than mowing, we're actually looking at bringing in sheep to do the mowing for us. We thought about goats, but goats like to climb on things, and we thought climbing on solar panels isn't the best thing for it. The other thing that we've been able to do is Kaylee Lane in our office worked with some local people and to meet some of our screening guidelines that are within the city. Rather than putting up fences and walls and things like that, we've come across native vegetation. So she and several others went out and planted native vegetation around on the north, east, and west side of the solar farm. And as those grow to provide coverage and shielding, if you will, it'll be native vegetation, which is really pretty cool. One of the other things that Kaylee is directly responsible for is the rebate programs, and we've been reviewing and updating those. Neat idea is we've added electric vehicle charging stations. We now offer rebates both at the residential and at the commercial level. If I could say something else about this too, just to remind council, we currently have 2 level 2 chargers. There's level 1, which would be the basic one in a home. A level 2 is an upgrade at a home. We have 2 level 2 chargers currently in the city. One is located at Banshell, and I see that it gets used quite often. The other one is located on the west side of City Hall. And even then, when I come over to City Hall, oftentimes there is a vehicle parked there. And I want to emphasize that they are put in primarily to charge city vehicles, but they're open to the general public. And if there's a slot open, any of them can plug in and use those. We did receive some federal funding through the VW grant program, and we are planning on putting a level 3 charger in this spring down by the come and go off of Highway 30. And Highway 30 and Dayton. Level 3 is those extremely fast ones where you can typically charge a car in under an hour. And then we've got, that's okay, I've got somebody playing with my, oh, is that better? All right. Always want channel 12 to be up to speed on that, so you had to come in and change it. Let's see what I was saying. So then we have two other chargers. One's going in at the intermodal facility, and one is going to be going in on the west side of town over by the Fairway Meats and Hy-Vee West. And we're encouraging other electric vehicle sites to be put in. In fact, we've seen several proposed hotels that have made arrangements, at least within their parking lot, to have spots where EV chargers could be put in either with the hotel or could be added at a later date. So we're very excited about that. And again, we offer rebates both for residential and commercial charging stations. Other things that we've added is water heat pumps and passive solar water heaters that, again, kind of move it away from maybe using natural gas and making it much more sustainable and environmentally sound. We've also got a geothermal pilot that we're looking at over at Baker Subdivision. We're looking at providing basically it's geothermal wells to heat and cool those homes. And we think we have a program by which for affordable housing, we can do this. And it's similar to us building a power plant and then recovering that over multiple years. We're going to try to do the same thing with geothermal for the affordable housing. I mentioned the EV charger, so I won't mention that again. And we're also home right now to a solar crate that is sitting over by the power plant, the cooling towers. This is a project that Iowa State worked on with the IEDC and with Iowa National Guard. And it's basically solar in a box that they set up the solar, and it can be used in locations where they need to set up what we call as a microgrid in a short period of time. So we're hosting that right now, and we're providing some test cases for them on their system. So we're excited to be working with that at Iowa State. Moving on to electric production. This particular budget is up a little bit from the previous year. The cost increases are basically caused by a couple things. We have an insurance increase that's affecting one piece of that, and we have some additional building and boiler repairs that we want to get covered in 21 and 22. So that's what's causing the slight increase in this particular expenditure. We have coming up this year, Unit 8 superheat replacement. We've hired a contractor. He's out procuring tubes. They're getting those coated, and they will be in here this spring to bring that unit back online. Hence, the second bullet is that Unit 8 was only available about 42.8% of the time this last year. It's typical that with a good, solid working boiler, working unit, it should be closer into the 80% range. And so we're looking forward to replacing those superheat tubes. Power plant also bought a new proactive maintenance software package. This will allow us to, as you continue to maintain data on breakers and pumps and fans, you can see changes in their characteristics that will cause you to say, I think we should change this motor out before it fails. And we're really looking forward to getting that populated so that we can be proactive in our maintenance and catch things before they break. Unit 7, they did have the tubes Inconelled a little over, it's been running now a little bit over a year. And knock on wood, I'm happy to say that we're not seeing the corrosive reaction to the tubes with this new Inconel, and we're very favorable on putting the same stuff into Unit 8. Last thing I have listed here is our waste to energy study. This is something that us together with Resource Recovery under Public Works, we're going to be studying new ways of how we can best use the garbage from the county. You know, what can we recycle? What can we reuse? And then what makes the best sense on how to get rid of it after that. So that study is out, and we're looking for a contractor or a A&E firm architectural engineering firm to work with us on that. The biggest part of our budget, which is our fuel and purchase power, the good news is as it is our largest one, this is also down quite a bit. And what's really helping us here is our natural gas costs are actually lower. Last year, we negotiated a slight extension that allowed us to drop the price by about 10% on our natural gas costs. We also have a section in our contract with Alliant that does some of our transportation of this gas. And for the first 5 years of the contract, it was at one rate, and that rate drops in half beginning this year. So that should save us close to $1 million in transportation costs alone. Purchase power costs remain flat. However, sales are also lower due to COVID. We're seeing a little less than 5% reduction in our energy sales over the year. We see that actually starting to come back by midsummer and get back to historical levels. When Unit 8 comes back online, we're going to actually see that we're going to be burning more of our natural gas than we have this last year. Unit 7 doesn't burn as much, and we're going to be buying less purchase power. So although it does not affect the budget overall, there's going to be a little bit of a shift between purchase power and fuel, and it's going to one's going to go up a little bit, one's going to go down, but we've taken that into account in our budget. From an electric distribution standpoint, there's actually two subcategories. We look at operation and maintenance, which is just the maintaining of the system, and then we look at the extensions and improvement, which is the growth. And I'll touch on this first half, this first piece of it now. Basically, within electric distribution and operation and maintenance, the biggest things that affected us this year were the tree trimming costs are going up slightly. And the derecho, obviously, we had a lot of overtime. We're expecting to get reimbursed from FEMA, and we're working with finance and other departments to go through that process. I don't think there's anything else I need to say on that. From an extensions and improvement standpoint, this is up a little bit, and we've got several projects that we're working on that are coming in. You can see them listed. Mortensen Road, we're going to do some feeder upgrades there to carry more load. New Ames High School, we've had to redesign some of the ways that we're feeding that. University Boulevard and South 4th, we're reconfiguring that for Iowa State as they do some reconfiguring on their side of it. Mentioned that distribution was involved in SunSmart, basically getting wires to the site and getting them hooked up. We've also got University Boulevard and South Riverside. We put a tie in there to serve the John Deere facility that's in the research park. And with this new tie line, we'll be able to carry and handle more of the growth at Research Park. And we continue to put streetlights in at Grand and South 5th for those extensions. From a technical services standpoint, one of the things that we learned with COVID is we're finding it harder and harder, or it's taking longer and longer to get things like meters and equipment. So we're seeing longer lead times. So we're working towards ordering things and in larger quantities than we have in the past. That's driven up their budget a little bit. We work closely with water. We're not going to 100% automated meter reading. That's what the AMR stands for. But we typically look at sites where it's difficult to get to the meter. Maybe they're locked in garages or it's hard to read. And we've even been working with our meter readers to make sure that if there's places that maybe are not safe, maybe it's a confined space or something where maybe we don't want somebody to go in alone, we're changing those out to automated meters also so that we can look at the safety of our own employees. They're looking at a similar maintenance management software that Power Plant is so that they can be proactive on their outages. So that was actually included into the budget. We're also replacing old oil breakers with something called SF6. And I believe I'm not even going to guess what SF6. Brian Phillips the other day at a URAB meeting had it right off the top of his tongue. So one of
sulfur hexafluoride.
There you go, sulfur hexafluoride. All right, thanks, Brian. And then we're also, one of the other things we learned during derecho is our maps were not portable. So we would get information on an outage or something that we needed to send somebody somewhere, and we weren't able to load them effectively out in the field. So we're looking at portable mapping software that will greatly improve the way we can see our system as we're traveling. From an engineering standpoint, much of our electrical system is over 30 years old. So we continue to look at replacing failed underground and overhead lines. A lot of our older underground is what's called direct buried, so it's right in the ground. We've stopped that practice now for many years where we put it in conduit, which makes it much easier. But having it direct buried when it fails, it is time consuming and troubling to go in there and try to fix it. So we need to get in there and take care of some of that. And it takes longer to replace underground problems and take care of those than it does overhead. Tapa Hollow substation was rebuilt, and that was completed this last year. We continue to work on LED streetlights. This should be the last year we have it as a major project, which is part of our capital improvement. And then beyond that, it'll go into maintenance. We had several new subdivisions that we worked on this year, in addition to adding some streetlights in those that we don't directly serve. Engineering was also involved in the SunSmart project. We had a lot of different people on the SunSmart project. And then they worked closely. We had retail solar approvals. So currently on our system, we have 147 retail customers that have solar on their own roof, or I think there's even one that's a ground mount. And engineering goes out there to make sure that they're properly installed and hooked up and operated safely. So from an electric fund standpoint, our total expenditures, we're looking at $69 million. This is actually down predominantly because of our fuels, but that's down about 6.9% from last year. That's down both because of fuels and because we're starting to see a decrease due to COVID in energy consumption. Revenues are slightly less than that, but that does not concern us because we do have a fund balance that is over the minimum fund balance set by council. And so we're looking at a slight revenue decrease of only 1.4%. We believe the ending fund balance will be just slightly below 30 million. We're required to maintain at least a $10 million balance. So the unreserved fund balance at the end of 22, we estimate to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million. With all these numbers, in talking with finance and city manager's office, our recommendation is no rate increase is required for 21 and 22. This concludes my slides, but I wanted to mention a couple of other things, and that is we were recently recognized by the National American Public Power as a reliable public power provider. We're currently at the gold level, and before they announce it, they've told us that we are so close to platinum. If we can just find 2 more points, they could raise that to platinum. So we're scrubbing the information that we sent them to see if we could come up with 2 more points. I don't want to make it sound like it's a vote or anything, but if we can find these 2 points, it would be a good thing for the utility. We were also recently named a smart energy provider based on our combination of our wind, our solar, and burning refuse-derived fuel, and we received an award for that in 2020. At this time, I think I'm done, and I open it up to questions that you may have.
Questions for Don? Gloria?
Don, just out of curiosity, what goes into that gold or platinum rating? What are you getting points for, in other words?
Okay, very good. So a lot of what they're focusing on is what are our safety practices? How are we, do we do what's called a tailgate talk? Before every time our line department, for example, goes out on a project, the foreman or whoever's in charge of that group, they'll literally sit on the tailgate of a truck and say, okay, what's our project today? All right, we're going to string here to here, or we're going to replace this fuse or do that. And so they look at safety. They look at the reliability of the system. They look at how do our rates compare to other people. They look at how are we educating our customers? Do we do a good job of notifications? Are we doing rebate programs? Are we in tune and in touch with our customers? So it's really a holistic review of everything that a good utility should be doing. And to be honest, it's not so much getting the rating that is the real benefit. It's going through these questions because it causes us to question our methods and our processes and things like that. So we've been it's called RP3 for short, Reliable Public Power Provider. And we've been silver and we've been gold and we've been striving to hit platinum. So that means that we must be doing something right.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear it. And, if educating council counts for anything, you certainly do a good job of it every year.
Thank you.
Other questions for Don? Don, out of curiosity, how does purchasing the electricity generated by the solar panels compare to wind and what you buy on the market and what we can produce? Is it compatible, or do you have any benchmark for that yet? Or
yeah, our wind contract and our solar contract are remarkably similar in cost per kilowatt hour. So they're both running slightly under 6 cents. We can produce power at the power plant for about 3.5 cents, and there is what we call the market energy right now. There are times that varies hour by hour, and that can fluctuate wildly. It's averaging right now in the area of 2 to 3 cents, depending upon time of the year and that type of stuff. So it's slightly more expensive, but there are some inherent benefits with each of those. Obviously, wind and solar are renewable. Solar is, I think, has a better profile for us maybe than wind, but you don't get a lot out of it. I mean, it all comes in peaks at noon. Whereas with wind, it's when the wind blows, you get the energy, and typically it doesn't blow a lot in the hot summer months when you're looking for it. Yes, so it's comparable. It's a good mix. We're constantly looking at other energy sources going in the future and how we can become greener and more sustainable.
And then just a comment regarding the survey. We understand that what your department did was absolutely borderline heroic in terms of all the work that you guys did. And I know people were working 24/7. I know I talked to Steve many times. I heard your voice in the background. You guys basically had a war room, set up. And so we greatly appreciate what you did. When you do the survey, though, it'd be interesting if the questions could be written such that if you could somehow evaluate services but for derecho, and then also how do we do during the derecho? Because the point is that it would be very unfair to have the department, rated overall during the year with that one element potentially being an outlier. So just some thoughts as you and Susan work through the questions. It might be a time to kind of extract that out to see how the benchmark continues besides or but for hopefully a once in a lifetime situation. So
good point, sir. We still want to continue to learn from derecho though, and continue to do improvements so we don't suffer the same way we did this last time. But thank you for your kind words.
Yeah. And last question is, and this is a little bit of CIP. Could you just, for those who might be watching or listening, just share what steps the department is taking to try and minimize the issues you encountered in terms of when we lost, didn't anticipate it ever happening, about losing both of your lines that went out to the west, went to the south. You talk about doing a generator. Can you just maybe share just real briefly what we're doing to try and eliminate that so we can get power on more quickly, to get plant started again?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So a little bit of background for most people is City of Ames in and of itself is somewhat unique because we have a lot of generation located within the city. There are many municipals, many other communities. I mean, Des Moines does not have enough generation within its boundaries. But Ames is fortunate that we have all of this generation. In addition to that, we have two major tie lines, one that runs over to Boone. It's called Boone Junction Substation. And in 2015, we also then built a line down to Ankeny. We have a major line that runs, basically parallels the interstate. We have a third line that runs down 69 that goes over to Johnston. That's a smaller line, can't carry the whole town. But so what we have is we basically have generation online, typically burning refuse-derived fuel. We have these three tie lines. We can take any two lines out and continue to serve the city reliably. When the derecho came through on two of those lines, not only did it just throw some trees into the line, but there were two of them that literally had poles on the ground. So it's not something quickly and easily to be fixed. The third line had a tree in it. Quite frankly, what we were waiting on, we have to work very closely and very safely with our neighboring utilities, and we needed another utility to respond at Boone Junction to make sure that the line was safe before we could send a crew in there to remove that tree. Fortunately, the lines serving Boone Junction Substation were coming back online. So the moment the tree was removed, we were able to energize that line, which brought voltage to the town. With voltage, then we were able to start up our high voltage substations and start picking up load by 7 o'clock. I think it was a Monday night, the night of the 10th. And then it just took us a while to do that. That told us one thing, that even though that is such a rare thing that all three lines would go down, and then it took our unit, which was online, it could not carry the city. So we had to bring it offline from a safety standpoint because it physically was not capable of carrying those to the town. But it basically taught us that we were beholden to somebody else to start restoring power. And with the generation assets that we have, we're quickly seeing that to be in charge of our own destiny would be to for sure have the capability of being able to start our own units without outside lines helping us. And so we have two projects in the CIP. In fact, the capital improvement plan, since we spoke to council, I've already given Curtis Spence, the plant manager, the directive to start studying that today, even though we don't have that coming into our budget for 2 years. We want to know what that answer is today, and maybe we'll be coming to council with a project sooner than that to bring in generation that allows us to start other generation to establish voltage to pick up the town much more quickly. And I want to caveat too that although it's prudent to do that and get voltage established within the city, no amount of generation at any of those locations would have prevented the outages and the devastation that we saw in the backyards of homes and things like that. There were so many trees and so many backyard lines that even had we had all of this generation on, it still would have taken days to get crews in there. And we had 9 different cities and their utilities in here helping us. And Joshua Thompson and his group were in there pulling out trees morning, noon, and night. So it wasn't just from electric. There were people from all across the city that helped us on that. So I want to make sure that they get the recognition, because we couldn't do our job if it wasn't for them.
Thank you. Any final questions for Don? Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Move on now to fire safety. Rich.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Excellent. Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor, on behalf of all the members of the Ames Fire Department, thank you for allowing us this opportunity to present to you our 21-22 operating budget. Tonight, I'm excited to have alongside me, well, at least virtually, our city's building official, Sarah Van Meederen, our 2 deputy fire chiefs, Doug Allen and Tom Hackett. Fire is broken down into two major programs, fire safety and building safety. Tonight, my goal isn't to tell you all about the numbers that you have in front of you. Instead, I want to take you on a little journey highlighting some of the amazing programs and people we have and show you how the community's investment in our department is allowing us to better serve our residents and keep them safe. Obviously, if you have any budget number specific questions, please stop me and I'd be more than happy to answer them. Right now, we're looking good for staffing levels. We do currently have one opening in our firefighter ranks, and we'll evaluate filling that position later this year as we continue to realize the real financial impact of COVID-19 on the general fund. Overall, we're recommending a 2.8% increase in the fire safety budget. I also want to recognize Iowa State University and their 25% commitment to our operating budget and debt services, which is projected at a little over $2 million next year. The partnership between our two organizations has provided multiple opportunities for both the university and the city of Ames, from grant opportunities for ISU professors and some of the different projects that they've worked on, to shared hazardous materials equipment and response. Ames Fire and Iowa State University continue to find ways to improve the safety for students, faculty, and visitors alike. A great example of this relationship was the mass COVID-19 testing for ISU students this last fall. From July 31st through August 16th, the Ames Fire Department supported ISU's COVID-19 move-in testing. So each day of the testing, the Ames Fire Department committed 2 members to provide emergency medical support at Lead Rec Center to support ISU's operation. Ames Fire was responsible for providing the emergency medical care for ISU staff who were conducting the testing, as well as the students that were being tested. A total of 8,094 students were tested during this 2-week period. And our hats are off to Iowa State University for running such a successful operation and their proactive approach. They have truly been outstanding partners to work with. So next, we're going to move on to our fire and admin support division. If you're following along, we're on page 44. I'll talk a little bit about how we responded to COVID, the derecho, obviously, and then a little bit of where we're at with our strategic planning process. So once COVID hit, this became our new mode of operation, and here we are tonight. Communication, everything went virtual. Since March of last year, our Emergency Operations Center, our EOC, has been up and running. We have 2 teams within our EOC. We have a command team made up of the city manager's office, HR, police chief, and myself. And then we also have a working team made up of other department heads who oversee the operations, logistics, planning, finance. We meet weekly, and we even were meeting twice a week all the way up until this last September. And I can't thank these 2 teams enough for their dedication, time, and commitment to our community and all that they do each and every day to keep our employees healthy, safe, and informed. Just great teams. We also host a weekly community partners meeting. This group has been meeting every week since last March as well. And this probably has been one of the most important steps we could have taken as a community in combating COVID-19. We've been able to unify messaging, support each other's operations. We were able to strategize the setup and operation of the Story County test site. I just can't begin to thank these organizations and their members that are on our team enough for their dedication and commitment to our community. Daily station cleaning rose to a new level with COVID-19. Here you see one of our lieutenants using a handheld electrostatic disinfecting sprayer. We got one for each station. They have been a blessing in so many ways with being able to clean all of our equipment, especially after going on calls. Working a 24-hour shift in a congregate living situation created many challenges, but none that the crews were not able to overcome. Crews are responding to COVID-19 medical incidents every day. They're dealing with COVID amongst other crew members and even dealing with COVID back at home. Our crews have done an outstanding job serving our community during this pandemic. They've been able to adjust on the go, minimize PPE burn rates, and still deliver exceptional customer service to our citizens. I'm very proud in how they've responded to the pandemic. I'm proud of how our supervisors have led their crews during this crisis, and our command team has worked together to develop multiple diminished workforce strategies to make sure that we're able to maintain 100% response readiness. As emergency medical service providers, we were also part of the first group of individuals within our community to get vaccinated. I'm very happy to report that our crews saw this as an opportunity to model the way within the city and for our community with over 80% of our department getting vaccinated. We should have second doses complete by next week. On August 10th, we experienced a second community-wide emergency, the derecho. Our crews responded to over 90 calls for services within the first 48 hours of the storm, from fires down power lines to injuries and CO calls. It was a busy couple of days in there, busy week. Last February, just before the COVID hit, we were able to hold an all-day strategic planning retreat with our command staff. That was facilitated by Donna Gilligan. The 6 Thinking Hats process was used to help us refine our emergency response model. We hope to have a draft copy of our strategic plan available for review later this year. This is a neat project to highlight here. Working with the city's risk manager, Bill Walton, our training officer, AJ Plock, was able to secure a grant through the city's insurance provider, ICAP, to purchase these 3 Stop the Bleed kits that will be placed throughout City Hall. The kits contain a trauma dressing, compression dressing, a tourniquet, gloves, shears are there, a blanket, and a marker. A neat program. Appreciate the collaboration there and the total city perspective. We'll now take a look at our fire suppression and emergency action program, which is going to be on page 46. There's 5 different categories that we're going to look at here. It's our recruitment, some live fire training, the new slide-in unit that we have in action, our training center, and also where we're at with our EMT transition. So last fall, amongst COVID, we were able to safely conduct new firefighter testing as part of our recruitment process. This was the first time we conducted the testing outside, which you can imagine has its own concerns with Iowa weather. But that was due to COVID. We needed to be outside so we could have the spacing we needed. And the event was a great success thanks to our HR department, Pure Fitness team, command staff, and other members of the department just did a great job coming together, collaborating, making this work, and making it safe for everyone involved. Testing was completed in 1 day versus being spread out over 2. And a special thanks goes out to the Ames Middle School for allowing us to use their track, and also to Mary Greeley Medical Center for allowing us to use Betsy Meyer Auditorium. So here are some of our new recruits. We were able to hire 5, and we ran them all through a 10-week recruit academy with our training officer, AJ Plock. Here you can see them dressed for some confined space training, and also learning how to use our fire extinguisher training prop. Here's a fun photo, relevant for today's weather. Some new recruits out having a little fun on the ice during some ice rescue training. If it looks like they're trying to give you the thumbs up, they're actually holding ice balls, and what they're doing in that picture is practicing pulling themselves up on top of the ice out of the water, part of the survival training that they had. We were also lucky enough to get to use the old Homewood Golf Course clubhouse for training this last fall by partnering with our Parks and Rec department. Crews were able to log many training hours at the clubhouse, practicing different drills, techniques. Weeks of training concluded with a full day of live fire training evolutions. Having a total state perspective allowed Parks and Rec to save a little bit on the demolition costs and provided our department with many training opportunities, and one that we hadn't had in 9 years with the live fire training. So we're very thankful for that. A great photo here of our crews taking advantage of 2 new training props that the Iowa Fire Service Training Bureau just purchased. In fact, they weren't out officially for use yet when we had them, but due to our long-term relationship with the Bureau, they asked if we would help get them set up and work out all the bugs. So we had a first crack at getting them before they're actually released to other departments. But what you see here are fire engine pump simulators, a full-size replica of a fire engine pump panel with all the same levers, knobs, and gauges you would find on our fire engines. The pump simulators allow crews to train realistically, experience hydraulic fluctuation, hose changes, pump failures, anything you could imagine related to pumping at a fire scene, all within the confines of our fire station and without any risk to the equipment. So that's always good. Great training opportunity. Last year, council approved the purchase of a water and pump slide-in unit. It's the first of its kind for our department, and helps us take advantage of a smaller, less expensive rescue style pickup truck that allows us to be more versatile. It's been put to great use this last summer and has allowed us to get back into areas where a fire engine could just not reach. We greatly appreciate your support with purchases like this, and just wanted to show you how beneficial this unit has been for our department. This photo is just from a small warehouse fire that we had over on Dayton Road back in November. The building was not in use at this time, but Nice shot there with the fire in the background. The crews did a great job getting it knocked down quickly. No injuries. And I believe the building has been cleaned up, if I remember correctly. Here's a graph showing the type of incidents we've responded to over the last 8 years. And as you can see, response numbers for last year are down, specifically within our medical response category. The decrease can be attributed to our consolidated emergency medical response protocols during the pandemic. And under the direction of Mary Greeley Medical Center, and in an effort to decrease exposure opportunities and slow PPE burn rates during the pandemic, Ames fire crews are only being dispatched to those high acuity emergency medical calls, such as someone having difficulty breathing, someone who's unconscious, or someone who it's a trauma call. The lower acuity calls, where somebody just has some general weakness or fatigue, or just needing transport to the hospital, are being handled by the paramedics. That being said, they still call us from time to time to assist with lifting or with patient care. So those calls are just being triaged better through Mary Greeley. And here's a little more focused breakdown of those types of incidents that we responded to last year. A major focus of our department is fire ground effectiveness. In fact, our crews specifically train and are evaluated on how effective they are on the fire ground through our quarterly assessment-based training program. Firefighters refer to them as ABTs. There are 10 different ABT categories that crews are timed and evaluated on. So we understand that we can't stop all fires from happening despite our best efforts and focus on fire prevention. But what we can make sure we do is that we stop the loss as quickly as possible when there is a fire. And this graph illustrates those efforts. And the graph shows only actual structure fires that we responded to Ames. This doesn't include all the property, only those, the valuation of the properties that we responded to. I'm excited to share some photos from our new public safety training site. Last year, we shared some photos with you of the site being constructed. I'm happy to report that one of the training props, the 2-story unit you see here, has been completed and is in use. The second prop, which is our residential roof and search prop, is about 90% complete and should be operational early this year. I can't say enough about how grateful we are to have the site and all the hard work that our training officer, both past and present, and our training team have put into getting the site up and running. And in fact, this fall, we actually conducted our first live fire training using the site. It was a pretty exciting day for the entire department, especially our training team and training officer who's put so much time and effort to get the site up and running. The site obviously provides multiple training opportunities, not just live fire, but laddering evolutions, hose evolutions. We also have a ventilation prop, so it's a simulated roof section that allows firefighters opportunity to practice their chainsaw skills in making a vent cut. Once again, we are grateful for the support of the city manager and the city council for allowing us this opportunity to even have a training site. So thank you. A little bit on our EMT. So our EMT transition process is well underway. As you may remember, we came to council last fall with a new contract from Mary Greeley Medical Center, which moves our department from emergency medical responder EMR to emergency medical technician service, the EMT. Now, the titles may not mean a whole lot, but the increased service level for our community means quicker access to more advanced medical care on site by the first arriving Ames firefighters, such as EpiPen, different airway treatments and management, blood glucose monitoring, patient-assisted meds, just to name a few. We have increased our minimum hiring requirements to now require EMTs within the EMT certification within the first 18 months of employment. And we currently have 5 members going through an EMT class this semester, which will increase our numbers to 37 out of 52 firefighters and lieutenants that are EMTs. Within the next couple of months, our department will start delivering EMT level services to the community as a provisional EMT provider. What that means is that if we have an EMT on duty that day and on that apparatus when they go out for the call, they'll be able to provide the EMT service. If not, we'll still be able to provide the EMR level of service. And then early in the year 2022, January, we will be an EMT service provider and will operate at the EMT service level 24/7 on every call. So pretty exciting there, and appreciate the council's support. Just real quickly, the new Storycom radio system is well underway. Crews received the new radios in June last year, and as you can see, they quickly underwent training, even on the treadmill, trying to get themselves out of breath and learning how to use the radio, how close to hold the mic to their SCBA face pieces. They did a number of different drills, making sure they were familiar with the radios. We want to take this opportunity to thank the City Council and City Manager for their support and contribution to ensuring we have a safe and effective long-term radio solution for not only our responders, but for our entire community. Deputy Fire Chief Tom Hackett, he has been instrumental in the development and rollout of the new radio system, both locally and at the county level. And I want to thank him for all his time and effort to make this a reality. The picture you see here on the left is the actual radio tower equipment being tested last month at Raycom over in Marshalltown. Pretty interesting process. Want to make sure it all works before it gets up into the towers. Community outreach. So I'll be honest, this has been a tough year, having to close our doors to the public. That was hard for us to do, not being able to do station tours and hear the laughter of children running through the station. It's been hard, but I'm proud to say that our crews have found a way, even during a pandemic, to safely share a fire safety message and continue to engage with our neighbors. We found new ways to engage with our neighbors. Our social media team launched a Where's Sparky campaign. That was pretty fun. Created a safe and fun community-wide scavenger hunt, highlighting different city departments and also sharing a fire safety message. Crews teamed up with Parks and Rec. You heard Keith talk a little bit about this, but we teamed up with Parks and Rec, police. The library was involved with it as well to host multiple park paloozas throughout town. Crews also found ways to take our message into neighborhoods through birthday drive-bys, along with Ames Police did quite a few of those. Even though we were not able to have an open house last year, I'm proud of how our crews found a way to still safely engage with our community, which is important in everything that we do. We even had the crews, they let down their guard a little bit and found ways to engage with our younger generations through videos such as Firefighting A to Z. We did some virtual fire station tours and a virtual book read. They also found ways to reach other groups within our community through public safety announcements, such as how to wear a mask appropriately or how to check your smoke detector. If you haven't had a chance to view some of those on our Facebook page, I encourage you to get out there and take a look at them. It's pretty funny videos out there that helps us engage with some of our younger generation. Moving on to building safety, we are looking at an overall increase of 3.6%. What you see pictured here is the high school under construction. A lot of work going on up there. We are happy to report that there are no building permit fee increases for next year either. So our inspection team has gone to great lengths to work with customers to clean up properties and buildings that are in disrepair. Our goal is always compliance, but that doesn't always work with every situation, which is why we have enforcement tools. We continue to refine our enforcement process with legal to make sure that we're following the law while trying to maintain the rights of the property owner, as well as respecting those of the surrounding neighbors. We hope to be back before council sometime as early as next month with some different enforcement strategies and a recommendation on some tools that would assist in the nuisance abatement process. And yes, just to zoom in on that picture, that is somebody's sump pump that is discharging into the toilet that some of our inspectors found out doing an inspection. I never know what you're going to find when you go into some different places. Here's an example where the process can work really well, where compliance was quickly achieved, and it was achieved because Sarah already had a relationship built with the homeowner, working on some other issues on the property. But this was a fire that took place on September 22nd on North Dakota. The picture on the right-hand side was 9 days later. So that was an ideal of how the process, if we get compliance, can work very quickly to get neighborhoods cleaned up and get properties out of disrepair. So I want to take a moment. So this is a good story here. The unsung heroes in our community are truly our inspectors. They are the ones working behind the scenes to make sure buildings are built safe and also remain safe while in operation. We get to experience their work every day. We probably just don't realize it. It's quite remarkable when you pause for just a moment and think about all the behind the scenes work that our inspectors do to make sure we're all safe. From simply plugging into an electrical outlet and not getting shocked, to getting a good night of sleep at a hotel because you know that the fire alarm and sprinkler systems are operational, that the exit signs are clearly marked and illuminated if you need to quickly escape through a smoky hallway, or that the HVAC system is properly vented so carbon monoxide doesn't build up. This is what our inspectors do. They provide all of us with peace of mind, and I'm grateful for So no rental fee increase this year. For the first time since 2001, we did not have any increase in the total number of rental units on the market. We stayed completely flat. So everyone talked about that rental bubble when it would be hit, and we think we're hitting it right now, staying completely flat with no new units coming online this year. As you can see from the picture, we had a slight code violation with the couch in the front yard. Even comes with custom cup holders, I'm told. The property owner promises us that it'll be removed by early spring at the latest. A little bit about COVID response. I'm really proud of how our inspection division has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our inspectors got really creative, allowing customers to submit pictures of their work instead of being in person, allowed contractors to do live video walkthroughs of construction projects to limit exposures. They also worked with landlords to ease tenants' concerns about inspectors going through apartment units and allowed videos of working smoke detectors in those rental units to take the place of having to go into each unit. Also, thanks to our online self-service portal, where customers can request and receive building permits, schedule appointments, check the progress, pay for those permits, our inspectors were able to issue permits throughout the entire pandemic without skipping a beat. Also want to talk a little bit about the damage assessment. I'm pretty proud of this one too. Our inspectors played a vital role in the early hours after the derecho hit our community. With an iPad in hand and a keen eye, our inspectors, who are trained in damage assessment, quickly completed a preliminary damage assessment of our community. The damage assessment map that you see here on the right-hand side created a working roadmap showing us the hardest hit areas in the community and helping provide our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, with improved situational awareness. Pretty cool that each location on the map is geolocated, includes pictures, an explanation of the damage along with a cost estimate. And thanks to their hard work, we had damage estimates prepared for FEMA within days, which aided in the presidential disaster declaration for Story County. Our inspectors did such an outstanding job with their assessment that they received praises from the state of Iowa Department of Homeland Security. Way to go, guys. Our inspection division also played a critical role in helping set up and staff information centers in the hard-hit areas of town after the derecho. They were there to help share information, provide electricity for battery charging, and really to listen to our customers. Team members also went door to door in some of those neighborhoods, personally checking in on customers and seeing how we could help. Here you can see our building permit numbers. They're actually up for this last year, our actuals from 1819 to 1920. Just for your information, in 2019, we issued a total of 63 new single home, family home permits. And this last year in 2020, we issued 88. However, back in 2019, we issued 275 multi-dwelling permits. Those are units, 275 new rental units. Last year, however, we only issued 11, which is why we've reached that threshold with why we didn't see an increase in rental numbers. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Rich?
I have a question. You mentioned allowing people to use video technology to replace some of the normally in-person activities such as building inspection. Is that something that you plan to continue going forward? Have you given that thought or not?
To be honest, we haven't. It was out of necessity that we did it. We wanted to continue to serve our customers, but it's something that we're going to have to explore further because it does create an opportunity there. We really like the one-on-one interaction. We feel so much of our job in inspections is education, not enforcement. So we like the face-to-face opportunities to put hands on, but there could be other opportunities where we can explore video. Absolutely. That's a good thought. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate valuing the one-on-one experience. And I wasn't trying to say that I thought that you should allow that going forward. I was really more curious whether you had gone through it yet. So thanks for your answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rich, I want to thank the inspections team for the work they did on a problem property over on Maxwell. That was very difficult for some of my constituents, and I think that they handled it very well, and I appreciate the work that they did on that and the ongoing work of educating the homeowner about the issues.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sarah, Adam, and the team over at Inspections does a great job, and we appreciate people's patience and also keeping us in the loop of what's going on in the neighborhood so we can get involved. Thank you.
Rich, you mentioned the commitment that Iowa State has made and the great partnering that goes on. Are there any programs at Iowa State that lead to attracting new firefighters? Do you get any Iowa State students who say, I want to be a firefighter with the AFD?
There isn't a specific program. They do have a criminal justice program over there. We've also teamed with athletics. I've been lucky enough to go in and actually be a guest speaker with some of the student athletes. And we've actually gotten a couple of recruits that way that have come here to test for us through that outreach. So there's not a specific program, but with the relationship we have, if there's people interested, they usually do a pretty good job of hooking us up and being able to do a ride along, even to come in and do internships. So I wish they had a fire science program. Maybe one day they will, but right now we have to work with them to find those future leaders for our organization.
Other questions for Rich? Well, thanks for your creativity and your department in terms of maintaining that important community outreach too. That's really a great way, and I just think that our entire city staff, all the departments, and our entire community came together, and it was very creative. And thanks for all you guys are doing.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We're blessed to get to serve our community in this capacity. So thank you.
Thank you, Rich. All right. Chief Huff, you're up next.
All right, good evening. Hopefully you're seeing my PowerPoint now.
Not yet. There we go. It's coming up.
All right. Brave new world we're in. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to present our fiscal year 21-22 budget. Probably a year like no other, and I think everybody would agree with me on that. Just a couple of pictures on this first slide. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see our community resource officer putting together our school supplies for a backpack and school supply giveaway. In the middle picture, that's actually us at the event giving away some of the backpacks full of supplies. And the picture on the right with one of our explorers is them treating it for COVID. So there was a cleaning process that they go through, and it actually had about a 30-day range on keeping it safe for everybody. So thought I'd start with those. I also want to take the opportunity to thank some of the folks on my team right now. You all know Jason Tuttle, our investigations commander and our public information officer. Aaron DeLashman is new to our team, but certainly not new to law enforcement. He comes from Iowa State University PD and is now our support services manager as Doug retired. And so Aaron's taken up that and is also working on some complicated projects. And Ron Edwards, our animal control supervisor, I think he's a magician for probably of anyone doing more with less. And a couple other critical players in providing police services are lieutenants who run our shifts, Lieutenant Dan Walter, Lieutenant Heath Robb, and Lieutenant Tom Shelton. And I think you'll see more of them as we go on through the presentation. So personnel changes. There's nothing that has affected the budget more this year than personnel. This has been a particularly unusual year with the number of employees leaving. As you know, Doug Houghton retired, and he's now been replaced by Aaron. The chief retired in August of 2020, and you can see there's a number of other openings that we've had. In our dispatch center, this is the first time in 6 years that we've had an opening, and we had two. And so that's, for a small unit like that, that's a significant change. We've hired replacements for all except we're still working on our police officer recruitment. We're still down 2 officers, and we'll begin a recruitment on February 15th. So shameless plug, if you know anybody to be a good police officer, send them our way if you would. You know, and the thing about personnel changes is you lose a lot of institutional knowledge. But on the upside, there's an opportunity to bring in some new energy, some new ideas, and some diversity. And so we're going to take advantage of those along the way too, as much as we miss those folks that have left us. So police services. We look at our core mission as having two parts: relationship building in a dynamic university community, and problem-solving partnerships. And, early this year, COVID made that mission much more challenging. We partnered with local churches to distribute school supplies to those in need because National Night Out had to be canceled. Our officers had to be very creative to continue on these efforts. We attended a number of events and some protests this summer. You may have seen them at the Juneteenth event. I know some council members were at that event. We actually helped plan that. We were at all of the Black Lives Matter marches. And I'm happy to report, in contrast to some communities, we had no violence or vandalism and had relatively peaceful protests and events during the summer. As you know, we're committed to justice and equality. We had many discussions, and listening to our customers, developed a plan to improve policing in Ames. And we're continuing to listen and develop and implement that plan. We really feel this supports the council goal of a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community, as well as communication and engagement with the public that we serve. This is a good time to note that the budget includes the upgrade of a current police officer position to a sergeant position. And this position will be responsible for a number of duties, including special event planning and staffing, policy updates, some statistical analysis, social media, and outreach and engagement coordination. So we think that'll be a very important position for us. I know that Rich alluded a little bit to Storycom. As you know, technology is an indispensable part of the work that we do, and we try and share these investments with our local partners wherever possible. We have dispatch and record system is shared, the network is shared, the radio system is shared, and as you know, the old radio system was failing. The new radio system will ensure interoperability with our partners with a fully compliant public safety grade radio system for both first responders and our other public service entities. At this time last year, I think we were discussing building the radio network and its capabilities. This year, we've been utilizing the temporary radio system while building the permanent system. So our goal is to be into the fully compliant P25 system, hopefully by this summer. And our provider is currently erecting 4 towers throughout Story County in what will end up being a complete 5-tower system. After that, we'll have significant testing of the system to ensure the benchmarks are made with full foliage on the leaves, leaves on the trees and all that to make sure that it all works. These pictures are just a few very recent pictures of putting those tower sites onto concrete. It's a huge endeavor, but it's moving right along and continues. The construction continues even during the winter here. Last year also, we talked about Lexipol and our policy conversion. We're almost complete with the conversion, with over 90% of our policy manual available to officers online, on their phone. And we've now added daily training bulletins to that as well. So officers are tested on their knowledge of our policies and procedures almost on a daily basis. We've also taken the extra step of publishing our policy manual on the police department website, which is then kept up to date. You may also recall that our insurer, ICAP, is very supportive of Lexipol to the point that they have a grant program to help pay a portion of the cost of Lexipol. So we've been able to utilize that to save some costs to the city. In addition to annual required training our officers have to complete, we have ongoing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is also a council goal, supported by high quality training and exploration of contemporary issues. As you may recall, one of the recommendations from the policing report is an equity, inclusion, and diversity officer for the city. Assuming that's approved, we will work with that person as we move forward to help further enhance our understanding of these complex issues. And the department will be a part of a citywide initiative committed to these principles, as well as a specialized course of instruction just for the police department. So last year we talked a little bit about hybrids. We have a little bit more experience with them now. And you can see that's a hybrid versus one of our non-hybrid vehicles in the picture. You can see there's not much difference in them. Right now, you can pick the hybrids out with the green stripe. As you may recall, last year we were discussing the anticipated savings that we might have by the utilization of hybrids. We now have 3 police hybrids in the fleet, and we anticipate transition to all hybrids within the next 2 years. Recently, we also replaced a couple of our unmarked investigative vehicles with hybrids because we were so happy with the performance we got out of our police explorers. The effort also supports the council goal of environmental sustainability. Hybrids cost about $35,800 versus about $27,000 and change for a non-hybrid. So they do cost more. That's about an $8,600 difference. However, this slide should show you that that investment is well worth it. The savings that we are getting on these hybrids is really astounding. We found that we save about $5,400 per year on fuel. That's a reduction of 3,600 gallons of gas. We reduce our CO2 by 32.1 metric tons, and we're increasing our miles per gallon, which is very important too. And one thing that we actually didn't even think about was oil changes. We went from changing the oil at least once a month in a non-hybrid vehicle to only about twice a year with a hybrid. So that was a savings we didn't even realize was going to come our way. So far, maintenance costs have also been a little bit lower on the hybrids. So overall, we're very pleased with them. And we're saving much more than the initial difference in cost. And so they're also cost effective over the about 2 years that we maintain a vehicle. The other thing that we've begun to think about is we don't know what the lifespan of a hybrid is. We know that our non-hybrid vehicles in the police fleet, we generally change them out about every 24 months or so at the point where they start getting about 110,000 miles on them. But a hybrid's different. And so it's certainly possible that we may be able to hold on to the hybrids longer than that 24 months. And every month we hang on to them saves additional money. So we'll be interested to see how they hold up over time. It's a little early to know, but as things sit right now, we're pretty pleased. Mental health volume continues to be high. We're making use of our community partners, most notably the mobile crisis response team. However, COVID-19 has made it much more difficult to respond to these types of calls, and our partners are also struggling to maintain levels of care with the restrictions that we've had. So these calls are not going away. In fact, they've increased. We're up about 100 calls for service from last year. We believe that has probably a lot to do with COVID. We've also found that many of our partners in this arena have more limited interactions with their clients due to the shutdowns. And so we anticipate the number increasing further due to what we're seeing with COVID. So we think we'll come back next year and that number will probably be higher yet again. I guess we'll find out, but that's what we believe. We're also being careful about the calls for service we're sending our police officers to. We look for exigent circumstances and whether we should send a police officer versus whether we should utilize some other resource such as mobile crisis or maybe a provider. Right now, the challenge is teaching our customers the difference between what a police officer should respond to and maybe what another social actor should respond to, like mobile crisis. So it's been a little bit of a learning curve for everybody, and we're continuing to work on that. And then someone said, well, what is going to happen next? And unfortunately, that question was answered with the derecho. We all learned a new word. Like everyone who works for the city of Ames, our staff pitched in to help. We utilize both officers and CSOs to staff water and ice stations and information tents. In some cases, making phone calls or even going door to door to check on some of our residents, along with fire and inspections and Parks and Rec. Due to the number of power and utility lines down, our own temporary radio system was also affected, creating some communication challenges for us. We actually use this, though, as an opportunity to ensure that the permanent system will not have the same vulnerability, so this won't happen again. You should be proud of the efforts of the employees that got it done. while a lot of them also had no power and other difficulties themselves. So everybody really did pitch in and get the work done that we had to get done. You're probably used to seeing the next couple of slides. We talk a little bit about our crime statistics. You may recall seeing these trends. The most notable item on this slide is a reduction in assaults. That number had been steadily increasing for a few years, down this year. I always hate to speculate too much about why certain crimes might increase or decrease. I certainly think COVID has had some impact on some of these numbers. As you're sure well aware, Iowa State did not return for their spring semester after spring break, so there were fewer people in town during that time, so that certainly might have something to do with it. We also found a slight increase in both domestic violence calls and sexual assaults. Again, it's hard to speculate on the causes for this, and it's possible that it's COVID related, but we'll have to see what 2021 brings as things maybe return more to normal. But we certainly don't like to see any of those lines go up. Quality of life issues, noise complaints are still trending down, which is good. You'll see the trespasses are trending back up. And what we have found is we're dealing with a lot more homeless right now. And that's where a lot of these trespass calls are coming from. This has been a tough time with the derecho and COVID-19, and the homeless population is on the increase. So we're working with our partners to see what we can do to try and get people into appropriate services so that they're not trespassing. This has been a difficult one for us. Property crimes, another interesting one here. You'll see that our theft calls are down while our burglary calls are up slightly. Now, I think that the burglaries might also have something to do with COVID and the fact that we had a lot of students that didn't come back from spring break and empty apartments. And I think that's part of that increase in residential. So we'll see what happens later. Financial crimes are generally down a little bit, but we still find a lot of scam calls as scams have really moved online. And they continue to be a problem. With the lockdowns and more people working remotely, this problem has gotten worse, with most scams living on the web now. And by the way, I have an urgent message about your vehicle warranty. How many of you have gotten that call? So a couple of examples of scams. In April, a local company reported an attempted fraud after scammers sent a payment notice via email to their accountant. The email was almost identical to the client's email, except the address was just a couple letters off. And that company wired $318,000 to a bank in Mississippi. Luckily, the bank noticed and flagged that account, and the money was returned to the victim, but it was pretty close to them losing $300,000. The IP address we traced back came back to either a California or a Belgium internet provider. You've probably heard of the grandparent scam. This July, an elderly victim received a phone call from a scammer claiming to be their granddaughter who had been in a motor vehicle collision and needed money for an attorney who was trying to resolve the situation. The victim withdrew $15,000 from a local bank and provided money to a courier. That's right, somebody actually showed up at their door to get the money, and the courier picked that money up a short time later and was never identified. So they were out $15,000. Terrible. There's social security scams. A victim received a phone call from a scammer claiming her social security number was being used in frauds in Texas. The scammer spoofed the U.S. Marshals and the Social Security office phone numbers. The scammer convinced the caller to send $5,700 in Bitcoin and $400 in eBay gift cards through barcodes and sent those by text message. And once those are gone, unfortunately, they are gone for good. And the last one, identity theft continues to be a bit of a problem. The victim reported an unknown person opened a small business loan in their name in the amount of $91,000. So the victim was alerted. Obviously, they're not out that $91,000, but it will take years for them to get their credit fixed after an incident like that. And that's the real tough part about that. Traffic accidents. With the lockdown and move to more online working and meetings, our motor vehicle crashes are actually down, which is not something that normally happens for us. So that's sort of good news. So we were down quite a few, still about $4.9 million in property damage from the 1,100 accidents that we did have. And I'll be honest with you, we are terrible at estimating damage on motor vehicle accidents. It usually ends up being about twice what we think it was. So it's probably a lot more than that figure, but that's kind of our estimate. And currently, Ames ranks 10th in the state for the highest number of accidents. And that's a little bit odd considering we have a student population that's not here year-round, and we have a robust public transit system. So you would expect to see our accidents lower, I think, than that. And as you know, we utilize grant funding from the Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau to supplement our efforts and enhance the safety of the motoring public. So we continue to do these programs and try and target high accident areas. The goal of our traffic enforcement should always be to reduce accidents and reduce injuries. And so we look at where those accidents are occurring and put our resources where we think that they will reduce the most accidents. Communications. Emergency medical dispatch calls are an important part of the business. 4,000 times per year, we're giving medical instructions over the phone, providing information to our emergency medical responders while en route to the scene. We document this information and pass through to our partners through our record system. And COVID this year is brought about more importance on this. They're asking those questions for all of our first responders before they show up. There's a whole COVID protocol, which is what this card is. So this is what that reference card looks like when our communications staff takes that call. They will go through a series of questions, try and identify whether COVID may be in that household. Not that we wouldn't go to that call, but just so our officers use extra precaution when they do. Again, nothing has affected parking more than COVID-19. With the emergency proclamation, football, basketball, and a lot of other events were just canceled this year or scaled back in some cases. A number of the football games had either very limited fans or no fans, resulting in very few parking citations written on game day. It'll be like starting over next season. We thought a couple of years of enhanced parking enforcement might make some changes in those neighborhoods close to the stadium. But with COVID, that's kind of like a year off. And so we think it'll feel a lot like starting over. We have implemented a new parking software system that works with Park Mobile, and that'll enhance our ability in enforcement with new capabilities as things do return to normal. So there's electronic marking of vehicles for 48-hour parking. There's a possibility of permitting electronically. And so we're pretty excited about what that will do to us once we get back to the point of having some events and some sporting events again. For our Ames Animal Shelter, they have made some really excellent upgrades in the past 12 months to better care for our furry, feathered, and scaled friends, as we saw a very diverse group of animals come into the shelter this year. When most people think of the animal shelter, they immediately think of dogs and cats. However, I think Ron and his talented crew provide care for a wide variety of animals. So in this picture, yes, that is a duck, that is a chicken, a guinea pig, a rabbit, and the little one that's hard to see is a gecko actually receiving medication. So they have to really be a jack of all trades when it comes to the animal kingdom. I don't think we've ever gotten an elephant, but now that I've said that, we probably will. Another part of their job is also animal rescue. And so in the picture there, you can see that they are rescuing a swan. Ron and his staff are really committed to live release, and they've done an excellent job being in that no-kill category. That's one of their commitments to our furry friends here in Ames. I applaud Ron and his staff for his work, and the community has demonstrated their respect with cash and in-kind donations. So we really appreciate the public and their ability to step up, especially when we get a difficult case when an animal needs some very extensive medical care. And our public has stepped up to help with those, allowing for those things to happen. So kudos to Ron and his crew. Some of the upgrades, the facility is a challenge. We have an architectural review, and we're looking for value engineering possibilities and models of community support for shelter upgrades from what we've seen in other communities. I believe there'll be a more detailed update at some future date on some of this, but we also had a new set of state standards that we are trying to make sure that we meet. This slide does show a success. As you see, our newly installed dog kennels. Those are the two pictures on the left side of the screen. And you can clearly see Morty in the middle there, how happy he is in his new kennel versus what our old kennels look like. It's quite an upgrade, and I know Ron and his crew are very proud of their ability to serve our dogs a little bit easier down at the shelter. And in this slide, you can see the delivery of our Her Villa, as it's called, which is outfit for care and keep of our feline guests. We recently installed a new set of steps, making it safer for visitors and guests. And you can see they've fully installed all the cages for the cats down at the shelter. So that's been a good upgrade. It's kept us in business, and they're doing a great job. It cannot be underscored enough how tough 2020 was for everyone. Between civil unrest, COVID-19, and the derecho, we were challenged to continue to provide high quality service to the public. I feel like we did just that while being open to new ideas and new ways of doing things by listening to our customers. I cannot be prouder of the PD staff over this last year and their perseverance. Thank you for your time tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I guess I should point out I've got a few pictures in this slide. On the one side is our school resource officers. They sent those to the school. The one in the middle is Lieutenant Heath Ropp, and unfortunately, our Shop with a Cop program had to be a little bit different this year. So instead of taking the kids shopping, which we just didn't think would be safe, we had some of our families come to the PD where we delivered, and in some cases we went out to them and delivered some goodies. And then one of our recruiting classes, that top picture, a good diverse group of people that we've hired here in the last year, and we're proud of them. And some of those, two of those officers are still in training. They should be done in April, and one of them came to us from another department, so she's fully up and running.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions or comments for Jeff?
Jeff, I just want to say thank you to the department for everything that it's done this last year. I know how hard it has been. I can't even imagine working through all of these challenges. And I think that the police department has shown its commitment to continuous improvement and caring for the community. So thank you to you and your officers.
Thank you.
Jeff, I did a little checking on your accident slide. Ames is actually is either the 6th, 7th, or 8th largest cities in Iowa by population. We belong to the Metro Coalition, and it's it's 11 largest cities in Iowa. So I had Dwayne Pitcher had done a population census for some assessments that we're doing. So it is interesting, from the standpoint that if we have, we're even the 8th largest, we have the 10th most frequent accidents. It's kind of encouraging to see that, if you go through the population,
We can always do better.
that's true. I'm just trying to throw you a lifeline there, though, buddy. Okay.
Well, it's always nice to meet new people, but not at the side of the road at an accident. So
Yeah, especially when it's cold and icy outside. So
exactly, which we're going to have tomorrow.
Yeah.
Careful.
Any other questions or comments for Jeff? Thanks for the great presentation, and I think I echo what Gloria said, and we're all looking forward to hopefully a much more positive 2021 as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the presentations for this evening. There are no dispositions of communications to council, so we'll go to council comments. Start with David tonight. Anything tonight, David?
No news from me tonight, thanks.
All right, Rachel?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Tim?
Nothing.
Gloria?
It's always enjoyable to hear from the departments.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nicole,
Nothing for me.
Amber,
Nothing tonight.
and Bronwyn.
Nope, nothing for me.
I would just echo what Gloria just said, and Steve, thanks for encouraging them to give just a snapshot of what all they do, and not droning through all the numbers. Council can read through all the numbers and the trends, and it just shows what a phenomenal place Ames is to live, and we're honored to represent and to serve the community alongside all those departments. So good job. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, we are adjourned. We'll see you tomorrow night, 5:15 again. Good night.